Hey guys, Jesse here, doing my final report for literacy. So my two artifacts, my first artifact is actually a combination of several items. I first have my informational writing piece that we did to support another teacher. This is when we had our 6 activities that we could make up ourselves in relation to introducing a topic and a group. I also had my illustrator and mapper, so that's together along with the pictures I had for my illustrator and mapper activity. All right, let me talk about those a little bit. All right, so those first couple artifacts, I thought those were important specifically to the main Common Core Teaching Standard 1B, creating developmentally appropriate instruction that takes into account individual learners' strengths, interests, needs, and that enables learners to advance and accelerate his or her learning. So the reason I thought these artifacts exemplified that was because they had so much open-endedness in them. They were so the children had the choice to make the project as their own, and when kiddos have that influence, they are able to have their individual strengths and interests and needs met by creating their own activities. So specifically in this informational writing piece, this is a good example of differentiation because we offered things like making your informational writing piece a comic book, or you can act it out, or you could do an interview or a timeline, or create a folklore or folktale. These are all different ways you can approach the same thing, but in a little different way that might gain interest. So the next piece, the illustrator and mapper piece, that was an activity with the book that we got to read as a group, and part of the book was we got to share back parts that we read, and my part that I had was an illustrator and mapper piece. So it looks like that there. And what the activity was for me to draw pictures that portrayed the plot of the book. So we did Refugee, and in our book Refugee we had a couple characters. We had Joseph, and he was a little German boy running from the Nazis. So there's my Nazi picture. We've got Isabel, who was running from Cuba. There's the police, and there's the boat, her running off. And there's Mohammed, unfortunately getting bombed. All the family down there. So what these all are different ways to provide an experience in literature that takes into account kiddos' different abilities, and also kind of gives them a way to talk about the content in a way that doesn't necessarily involve all writing. When you can illustrate and draw, you can still conceptualize the literature and the plot, but you don't necessarily have to be writing it all down. So that kind of helps to differentiate the experience by, instead of writing all the time, the kiddos can draw and interpret and kind of play with those literary pieces of a story without having to do the writing piece. All right, my second artifact is we had our literature circles, and we all did a lesson plan where we each did a lesson which came together as a bigger lesson plan. So I chose my lesson on the 4 forms of writing. So what I liked about this one is I thought it exemplified main Common Core Teaching Standard 1D, understanding how learning occurs, how learners construct knowledge, acquire skills, and develop disciplined thinking processes, and know how to use instructional strategies to promote student learning. All right, so that was a little bit of a mouthful, but what that means to me is that it gives formatted learning that you can see the progression of a lesson. You construct the knowledge, you give the skills, the children use them and acquire the skills, and by doing that, you start to develop that disciplinary thinking. So the way that I think my lesson plan demonstrated that was because of the gradual release of the activities. What I did in my 4 forms of writing activity is I was able to cover the 4 forms of writing originally, starting with I had turned the lights off, read a prompt on descriptive language, and read a piece about the ocean. And then I continued to do other passages on expository writing, persuasive writing, narrative writing. And so this really got the kiddos engaged, gave them examples and an anchor concept that they can hang on to. And then I had the kiddos do it themselves. They each found their own writing piece and then reported back to the group and gave their examples. So not only did I have the I do, they had the we do, where we all looked at the activity together, and then they taught each other. And then what I thought was nice about this lesson as well was that I thought the summative assessment was very clear. I know we talk about working backwards from the standard or from the test, and I think that this assessment does a nice job of holding accountable the kiddos' work previously to the tests. So I think it does a good job of holding kids accountable for the learning, but as well as doing the actual teaching that causes the learning to happen. So I think it demonstrates a good instructional strategy that promotes learning, and it sums it all up in this nice summative assessment. So that's what I got, guys. Those are my couple of artifacts. Thank you very much for watching.